Language acquisition. The role language acquisition plays in the counseling setting, presented by Jenna Chambers, Michelle Green, Melissa Rafferty, and Shannon Rash. During this presentation, we will cover language acquisition and how it can impact a counseling session, implications in minority populations, and international adoption, motherese and its implications in language acquisition, an overview of how this topic is addressed by mental health counselors, then our thoughts and recommendations for further research. Language acquisition can impact counseling in a few areas. One is in adoption. With international adoption on a rise, it would be important to help parents understand the process ahead, especially with older children who already speak their native language. Also, meeting with new parents who desire to raise their children in bilingual homes and helping them to understand the challenges, for example, the external stressors the children can face in trying to learn how to communicate in two languages, and the school and family stressors in trying to learn in one language while communicating with the family in another. The next point is the emotional ties to a language. Emotion is not always tied to the person's first language. It could come from a specific event, abuse, or affection received in specific language. The counselor would also need to have patience for their clients who might try to talk through a heavier topic in a language they are not comfortable finding the right words. A counselor could assume a client is being resistant when they might just need the time to find the right words to express their thoughts.
Hi everybody, my name is Michelle Green. I'm going to cover the appraisal of how this problem is addressed by mental health counselors. The age of a child at the time of adoption strongly correlates to the language outcomes. Younger children learn a first and second language much easier and faster than older children. Children who are older have difficulty communicating emotions such as sadness, loneliness, or rejection. Depending on a child's ability to adjust, he or she may have problems communicating emotion and how they truly feel. The counselor should find out about the child's background, their home environment, neighborhood, and church. The counselor should find out if the child has suffered any past traumas. The counselor should key in on body language to help them understand the emotions of the child that they may not be able to convey with words. The counselor may try role-playing or play therapy to help with the expression of the emotions that the child is having difficulty putting into words. The language barrier may still be too hard to overcome, which will cause the child to feel ashamed or embarrassed. In this case, the counselor may want to consider bringing in a speech therapist or another counselor who may speak the child's native language.
Speech and language acquisition for the internationally adopted child. The counselor will see underdeveloped language skills for the child who was adopted. This will be for all children, whether they are older or younger. The child has not been immersed in a different culture than their own and will need supports to work through how to speak the new language. The age of adoption highly affects how the child is able to learn a new language. I can personally give an example to this from my sisters, who were adopted from China. One of my sisters was 2 and the other was 7. The 2-year-old was able to pick up and learn English much quicker than the 7-year-old because the 2-year-old had not learned to fully speak in Mandarin. The 7-year-old had been in several services to help her learn English. The environment that the adopted child was in can influence what a child's brain development looks like. If a child was neglected and laid to bed for most of their life, then they are going to have significant setbacks. And if the child was able to be shown love and support, then the child will overall function better in the new environment. How the child started their life is a very large indicator of the struggles they will endure. Progress will look different for every internationally adopted child. Some children might have had English in their education incorporated in. Specifically in China, the children are able to learn English in their schooling. Others have never heard English before and will begin the extensive process of learning a new language. This can come in many forms depending on the child. The child needs love and support as they begin on the journey of learning a new language. The children who are able to speak a different language will lose it rapidly. Children who have mastered another language will quickly lose that language when they begin another if it is not continued to be practiced. It is important that if a child wants to keep their past language, that the parent supports that and encourages the child to continue on and to become a bilingual child.
Now let's discuss maternal speech or motherese and language acquisition and if it is relevant to minorities. The answer to that question is absolutely. Research done by Dr. Erica Hoff shows that low SES or socioeconomic status monolingual and bilingual children are equally at risk. These children struggle with language skill development due to their lack of immersion in English during early development. Low SES monolingual children are less likely to be introduced to a wider vocabulary due to their parents' own lack of higher vocabulary and less interaction time with their children due to their financial situation. For example, both parents work. These parents are also more likely to offer directional speech to their children as opposed to conversational speech. Hoff's research shows that parents that have longer conversations with their children during early development offer their children a larger vocabulary. A long conversation offers more context for the child to figure out the meaning of the words. Low SES bilingual children may experience long conversations in their heritage language that gives them depth of understanding of their first language during early development. However, the lack of English in the home prior to school negatively impacts the development of English language skills. Immersion in their heritage language begs the question, should a second language be considered a deficit? Hoff suggests that the education system, and I'll add counselors, provide extra support for the development of English skills while valuing and making use of the child's heritage language skills. Typical worldview, this brings up a couple questions. What does the word say about language and why does it matter to God? So throughout the Bible, especially in Proverbs, there are tons of verses about the tongue and the good and the bad. So the power of the tongue is unequivocal. God brought life to the earth with his tongue. So a couple of verses. We have death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Proverbs 18:21. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that may benefit those who listen. Ephesians 4:29. This verse is especially relevant to our project because it shows that language is important and it's beneficial when it is used appropriately. The words of a whisper are like dainty morsels parts of the body. Proverbs 18:8. This speaks to the nature of motherese and how we speak to our children. And from a socioeconomic or minority viewpoint, this is all important because Jesus called us to serve the least of these. He says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you do for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." Matthew 25:40. All the life speak into our clients as far as language is concerned, in all aspects, whether it has to do with mothers talking to their infants as they grow older and how it affects them. This is all important. A quote from David Platt, which I found extremely important, is, "We care for the orphans, not because we are rescuers, but because we are rescued." And that is just the truth.
In conclusion, language is a vital part of functioning for humans. Language is how we communicate in our everyday lives. This can be difficult for a child as they have previously heard a different language and are now being immersed in a whole different culture. The counselor needs to be able to look at all aspects of the child's background and environment. This might be difficult in the fact that some children might not know their background if the child was too young to remember. The counselor will need to gauge based on what they've already known about the child. If the child does know the background, then the counselor can begin to process through what the child has been through and learn how to best help the child. Children who are internationally adopted need to have homes where the parents are ready to take on a challenge. Taking on an internationally adopted child is not going to be an easy task, as I had mentioned before. The child is not only going to be dealing with language barriers, but attachment, culture shock, and learning how to function in a family. Language acquisition is a struggle for minorities just as it is for internationally adopted children. Children who are in minorities need to have the same supports in place just as the internationally adopted child does. More research needs to be completed on this subject. Language barriers is one of the most difficult things that an internationally adopted child will deal with. More supports need to be in place for the family to be able to help their child through the new transition.